Hello and welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Tonight, is it Trump's big test? Millions of Americans have headed to the polls today in crucial state and city showdowns. And even though Donald Trump's name isn't on a single ballot, his shadow looms over everything. From governor races in Virginia and New Jersey to the rise of the hard-left Mamdani in New York, this is being called a referendum on Trump's return. Meanwhile, the Democrats are melting down, despite looking like they're going to be making gains tonight. Let's listen to what former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had to say.
How can I say this? It'll sound like I'm awful about Trump because he's just a vile creature. The worst thing on the face of the earth, but anyway.
The worst thing on the face of the earth. Okay, meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg, the lovey's lovey, literally ripped up a note on live TV after being asked to correct herself after making false statements about the president.
The meetings that they're supposed to go to when they're listening to, what the hell, what?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yes. We don't know if Trump used an auto pen.
Oh, come on.
But we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. You know, the hardest thing about this job now is no one understands nuance.
Yes, viewers of The View, they're understanding nuance. But will the voters share that sense of Trump derangement syndrome? And the question on everyone's lips is, what does any of this mean, especially for next year's midterms? To discuss all of that and more, I'm joined live tonight in Washington, D.C. by Tim Rice from the Daily Wire. And in a moment, we're going to speak to Congressman Brian Babin from the great state of Texas. But first, Tim, good evening. The Dems, if the polls are believed tonight, are going to take New York by quite a margin. It looks like they're going to take the Virginia governorship. New Jersey's on a wire. It looks like California, they're going to get their gerrymandering votes through. They should be celebrating tonight. They should be happy and, with a skip in their step. Instead, they're sort of slipping back into the very worst sort of Trump derangement. What's going on?
It's really bizarre. It's almost as if they missed the fun of the last couple of election cycles, right? I mean, we've made a lot of hay out of these elections because they're the only ones we have. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone's really surprised that New Jersey, Virginia are going to go blue, that California, Gavin Newsom is going to get a redistricting measure passed, that New York is going to elect a liberal mayor, right? None of these things are that surprising.
A liberal mayor.
Well, yeah, we'll get back to that. A very radical, but that's obviously the craziest part of the cycle. But yeah, it's kind of bizarre that Democrats aren't just, even if you're not going to celebrate it, at least just take it in stride and move on to the next thing. It's objectively good for them if they're going to pick up these seats. All right, Tim, stay there. Let's speak to Congressman Brian Babin. Congressman, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing, Harry?
Very well. Thank you for joining us tonight. It feels like Donald Trump's not on a single ballot paper anywhere in the country today. It's a very limited number of races that are going on tonight, yet it feels that everything is kind of seen through the prism of his return to the White House. Are these elections a referendum on the last 10 months?
Well, you know what? As you just said, Harry, they're probably going to win in Virginia, probably going to win the New York mayor's race, or New Jersey as well, but they're all in play. Let's put it like that. And I'm praying and hoping that we will pull these out. But there again, the Democrats ought to be celebrating the possibility of maybe sweeping these three states, California as well, on their redistricting issue. But you know what? They've closed our government down for the last 35 days. They got walloped at the polls in a electoral college landslide when Trump came in, and they just can't get over it, Harry. They absolutely cannot stand the fact that this so-called, as Pelosi said, vile creature is the worst on the face of the planet. It stuns me, the hatred and the Trump derangement syndrome that they have. Being a healthcare practitioner myself, they need to go see a doctor. They really do.
Does it help or hinder you? Does it help you when they sort of go this much off the reservation? And we've seen those clips of Pelosi, as you just said. It does seem to me that the Democrats don't seem to be getting their ducks in a row. Essentially, they're still reeling, as you said, from last year. But at the same time, Donald Trump is his CNN poll out this week had 69% of a disapproval rating. There is room for them to go on the attack. Are you worried about what tonight's elections could show about the direction of travel for the midterms?
You know, I trust the American people as long as we have fair and transparent elections. I think the American people, we're a center-right government and a populist. And I feel like that Trump is doing a fantastic job. I've never seen anybody work so fast in my entire life. We passed a one big beautiful bill, and since that time, he has done some amazing things. He's really flown all over the globe, making deals with friends and foes alike. And the Democrats just cannot stand it. They have to find something to criticize, and his every word, his every move. And quite frankly, I'm telling you, I think this is the most rapid, most successful, in such a short period of time, administration I've seen in my lifetime.
He is doing a lot on the global stage, you're correct. He always seems to be jetting off somewhere to shake some hands and sign some deals around the world. But are you concerned that he's not giving his full attention, perhaps, to some of the issues like the economy? I know he's going to give a speech this week on the economy. Inflation and the cost of living and prices are still on the forefront of voters' minds. There is beginning to be some rumblings that the fact is, we're still in a month-long shutdown, that actually the White House's attention needs to focus on more domestic issues rather than those global foreign affairs.
I think prices are coming down, Harry. I really do. We have the lowest prices of gasoline in 4 solid years. We just had another quarter point reduction in our interest rates. The New York Stock Exchange and the stock market is doing quite well, very well, as a matter of fact. And I think things are actually going our way in a way that I think probably it makes sense in the fact that we've got a man in office that is trying to turn this country back to its roots of its capitalism and free enterprise and freedoms and liberties for the American people. And a Congress that just got through passing the one big beautiful bill, the largest spending cut in history, the largest tax cut in history. I don't think it can help but do well. And I think there's a little method to the madness of shutdowns. I didn't know this at first, but the more this thing goes on, I believe that these Democrats are deathly afraid of the legislative session this time. They don't want to see Trump's actions put in codification and put into law. The more they can hold it up, the better they feel like they're going to do, even though I think they are losing the public relations battle on the shutdown.
Are they really, though? Or are you equally being blamed as well? There's pictures from Houston of absolute chaos at George Bush Airport as those lines tail around the block. How are your constituents really feeling about it when this is actually biting them, affecting their day-to-day lives? And we're about to enter the busiest travel session of the year with the run-up to Thanksgiving. Surely it's on all sides to end this chaos before then, or risk blighting the entire holiday season for millions of Americans.
Well, Harry, all I can tell you is what I'm hearing, we get a lot of mail, a lot of calls, a lot of texts, communications, and overwhelmingly my constituents, and I represent about 780,000 of them in the greater Houston area, from Houston all the way over to Louisiana, to be exact. And they feel like Trump is doing a great job. They totally blame the Democrats. They know the truth. And they're concerned. Yes, they are very concerned about air traffic control. They're concerned about food banks and what have you. But we are not going to turn the clock back. And when we explain to these people, if they do ask questions, that this government could be reopened with Chuck Schumer and 4 of his Democrat senators right now, within the next 5 minutes, if they wanted to. However, they have decided to go against a clean, continuing resolution, one that is at spending levels of the Biden administration, for goodness sakes, and that one that the Democrats themselves have voted for 13 times in the past. Suddenly, they want to increase spending by $1.5 trillion, $200 billion for free health care for illegal aliens. They're going to cut $50 billion out of our rural health care and hospital fund. And I think people, they know this. They understand that the Democrats are posturing. They are not telling the truth. They are caught in lies on a daily basis. And I think folks have caught on to it. The mainstream media certainly comes out with the things that you have just asked me about. Yes, they do. We expect that to happen. But I think the truth of the matter is this government is doing, under President Trump, is doing much better than we had anticipated until this shutdown. And quite frankly, even though the legislative session has been ground to a halt, the president has not let that stop him. The grass never grows under his feet. He's been all over the world doing deals, right and left, trillions of dollars in deals with friend and foe alike. And I really appreciate that. And I think most of the American people do as well.
Do you think, though, that the Democrats will and the Republicans will find a solution before Thanksgiving?
I would certainly hope that they do, because I don't know how the Democrats can continue to take the heat. As I said, most of our people understand whose fault this is. We did our work in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate, they did their job as well. On the Republican side, it's Chuck Schumer and 5 Democrat senators, and I think we're going to probably get to a point where we're going to work a deal. And I think the only question now is, how long is it going to be a continuing resolution for? Do we get? I don't want to do one in December. We'll do the same old deal that we normally do with a big omnibus and crammed down our throats. I don't want to see that happen. We need to get it out to a reasonable time, like to January, and give us some time to work, because the Democrats have eaten up all these past 4 or 5 weeks. But on the 21st of this month, we got to fish or cut bait, and that's what we're planning on doing.
You mentioned Chuck Schumer there. I'll just broaden it out slightly to the events of today. Chuck Schumer, AOC, as well as Mamdani in New York. It feels like the Democrats are basically being run out of New York at the moment. How does that, as a man of Texas, how does that land with your constituents? It does feel to me that this sort of hard left shift is coming out of one city and setting the agenda on the left for the entire country. Do Democrats down your way appreciate that?
I think the Democrats are scared to death of what's happening in New York City. We've got an extremist, a guy that is absolutely a communist, who, look what he's done. Look what's happened in New York City since Giuliani was in office. What's a shining example of American exceptionalism, free enterprise, where New York led, America followed. No more, folks, no more. But if you want a preview of what this Zohran Mamdani wants to do to that city, you can just look at the places where all these types of radical socialist policies have been in play. They've chased away jobs. They've chased away safety and security, like Dearborn, Michigan. And I think this man, Mamdani, is absolutely dangerously soft on crime. What's his plan? Defund the New York Police Department, lay off 1,300 officers, empty Rikers Island prisons, flood the streets with violent criminals, and then at this all at the same time not cooperating with ICE, putting law-abiding families and citizens and officers at risk. I think the people catch on to this. Now, maybe not the folks in New York City, because a lot of people have fled that city because of all the above reasons that I just mentioned. The guy wants to raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour, jack up taxes. He's going to run more people off. This isn't compassion. It's economic suicide.
Will the city of Houston, the state of Texas, your patch, will you be welcoming fleeing New Yorkers with open arms and their tax and they're spending money to come and live in Texas instead?
We welcome anybody that wants to come down here, work, make a living, and believe in the Constitution of our country, and make Texas just continue making Texas where it's really happening. Free enterprise, freedoms, liberties. This is the place, and that's why we're projected to grow about 25% over the next 15, 20 years. So I can only speculate, but when you have radical politicians like Mamdani, when they gain power, you see bad things happen. Streets less safe, economy much weaker, communities more divided, a lowering of our world status on the global stage. I can tell you we don't want to see that happen again, and I think I'm speaking for the majority of Americans.
Congressman Brian Babin from the great state of Texas, possibly seeing a lot more new constituents arriving in the coming months to flee New York. Thank you for joining us tonight and see you again soon. Now, Tim Rice is still in the studio with me. On that point, there was a really interesting point that the Congressman said that even the Democrats around outside of New York, outside of the coastal regions, in middle America are terrified of Mamdani. This is, this is a hard left takeover that could spectacularly backfire. Yes, they might take New York, and yes, they might take bits of California. Yes, they might take some nice liberal bits of the country, but actually the rest of the country's looking at this going, no thanks, right?
I think it's absolutely going to backfire, right? This isn't the first time that New York has had a radical leftist mayor, but it's certainly the most radical leftist, and it's the first time. I mean, look, say what you will about Bill de Blasio, no one liked him from the beginning, right? He tried to have his little weird kind of progressive socialist whatever, but Mamdani is unquestionably charismatic, and he's very clearly already being feted as the future of the Democratic Party. I had sat for an interview with Senator John Fetterman yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
We can talk about more about that later, but he said at one point, it was a great interview, and I think most of what he said made sense, but at one point he said, I don't think that the Democratic Party which wants to win nationally, will take its cues from Zohran Mamdani, even if he wins the election. And I don't think that's true. I think everything about today's Democratic Party, from the Schumer shutdown to the way Joe Biden, one of the oldest, whitest presidents we've ever had, tried to prosecute his term like he was some DEI godfather. Like, if the Democratic Party in the post-Obama years and the Trump years has proven to us anything, it's that they are absolutely willing to sacrifice national victories in favor of pandering to their most extreme left wing.
We have discussed at length already over the course of the last few weeks about the fact that there is a completely rudderless, leaderless sort of operation at the top of the Democrats. There is a vacuum to be filled, and so far it does feel to me that like the Mandamis and the Schumers and the Bernies and the AOCs are the only ones that really make any noise. You've got Gavin Newsom desperately trying to detoxify and lose the pronoun stuff and do right-wing podcasts and just generally try to sort of get the barnacles off the boat and distances himself from that radical leftism. But he's also then got his track record in California to defend. From where I'm sitting, it looks like the only future for the Dems right now is a shift to the left.
Absolutely, and it's also for all of the reasons that you just said, but also because the Democratic Party has gotten itself into this sort of vicious cycle where any attempt to moderate is going to seem like it's the most extreme voices immediately say you're a fascist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people in the Democratic Party calling Gavin Newsom a fascist, calling Gavin Newsom, a Trump toady, right? Senator Fetterman said to me he hasn't heard from any Democrats. MSNBC won't call him anymore. I mean, you as a Democrat say the most common sense things, and you are persona non grata.
Explain to our listeners who might not know, readers and listeners and viewers and everyone who might not know about who John Fetterman is. He's had a very fascinating journey, but he strikes me as the most sensible of all the Democrat senators right now. He is willing to engage with the Republicans. He's urging the shutdown to end. He's told everyone to stop being hysterical. You spoke to him for your interviews out today?
Yeah, interviews out today.
What did he have to say?
Well, he basically, he reiterated a lot of what he said, which is that, Democrats need to own this shutdown and that it's really just unacceptable and Democrats need to reopen the government. He has put the blame firmly on his own party. It is one of the many ways that he's found himself agreeing with Trump and the Republicans. And as you were sort of hinting at, this is a little bit shocking because Fetterman, before he was a senator, was the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. He was elected in 2022 after a very partisan campaign against Dr. Oz, during which he suffered a stroke and he still has he's still recuperating from that. But he was, this is the guy, Carhartt hoodie, working man, pro-union.
Kind of what blue-collar Democrats used to be, right?
And it's like they're shocked, though, that this guy who won a purple state by being a regular Democrat, he said that phrase so much during our interview, they're shocked that he's actually governing like a regular Democrat.
Head to thedailywire.com to read that interview. Do you think that John Fetterman will remain a Democrat for much longer? It feels to me like, the Republic, if his party shifts any further, he's going to be standing in the center with the Republicans.
I asked him that a couple of times. I was really hoping that that would have been his, I'm going independent moment. Wish he would have said that to me. But no, he said, he still believes in the Democratic Party. He believes in his version of the Democratic Party.
He's loyal to the party even when the party aren't loyal to him.
Aren't loyal to him, aren't talking to him. And I mean, I do have to admire his loyalty. He stopped short of saying that he couldn't become a Republican because he thinks there are certain things that are distasteful about the Republican Party. But I think it's going to be interesting.
Sounds like he'd be softened up over the years. Just in 30 seconds before we get a break. The other person that keeps popping up at the moment, I think is fascinating, is Obama. He popped up to say, let's easy on the lawfare, guys. It turns out that he called Mamdani to say, anytime you need me, buddy, I'm here. He stopped short of endorsing him completely, but he's definitely showing some ankle. Is the former, leader of the Democratic movement noticing there's a big old empty space in there? And, he's not an old guy, right? Is he eyeing a return?
Senator Obama again, right?
Oh,
go back and do it again.
Trump
right?
Obama 2028. Let's have a rematch.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like Barack Obama, he pops up every election cycle. I don't think we read much into it.
All right, coming up after the break, can Trump defy the Dems and the courts once again? Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. You won't miss a thing. Just hit subscribe on YouTube. Now, you and whose army? President Trump has hinted the US military could carry out mass deportations of illegal migrants. That would defy both the Democrats, certainly, and possibly the courts. But could Trump really pull it off? And would Americans even want him to? Joining me to discuss all of that and more is military policy expert Christopher Neiweem in the studio with me. And from North Carolina, Congressman Pat Harrigan. Congressman, good evening. President Trump's deployed the National Guard to Los Angeles, to D.C., to Oregon, to Illinois, to Tennessee. Critics say that's could it be a prelude to something a little more serious than patrolling over crime? Could we be seeing the sort of beginnings of a plan to boost ICE with military support?
Well, I think there's no question that the military has been sent into various cities across the country to actually make sure that federal law can be enforced and that federal operations with ICE and the Border Patrol are not being impeded, let alone having those entities get attacked, which is a problem that we have had. I think that there becomes a different little bit of a line when you're actually having military folks operate inside of American cities without the cooperation of that state's governor. That's something that we've actually been working through here in North Carolina. Obviously, everybody wants crime to go down. We want federal operations to resume unimpeded with our officers not getting attacked. If we can get everybody on the same page, I think President Trump is on the right path here to help our country restore law and order.
You can say get everyone on the same page. That sort of glosses over quite the level of backlash there would be to this. Not least from the Democrats, but from the media, from every television pundit you can think of. The howling would be off the scale. Is it feasible, do you think, that there could be a consensus over the use of the military, which is a debate being had not just in America, I'll give you, a debate being had in other countries across the West, that actually the scale of mass migration requires a dramatic intervention?
Harry, I think that consensus is absolutely a possibility. I mean, look at what happened in Washington, D.C. The murder rate is down over 60%. Just colloquially, my staff actually feels safe to go outside past 8 o'clock at night in Washington now. That's really hard to argue with from an outcome perspective. And so when you look at these, the 20 worst cities that we have across America, 19 out of the 20 are Democratic run. And so it becomes a bit of a challenge to gain that consensus. But I just think Americans are looking at outcomes and they're saying, well, what's it take to get those outcomes? And if we can all be on the same page and we don't have a constitutional crisis, let's give it a shot.
The leaders of those cities like Chicago, New York, LA, though, they point out that their murder rates are down dramatically historically. They say they don't need this help, and this is all political showboating. Oh, we've lost. Chris, we've lost the congressman temporarily,
from our streets.
He's back. Hold on, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes. Oh, good. Sorry, we got you back. I was just saying, sir, in cities like Chicago, New York, LA, they argue that the murder rates are actually dramatically down, and this is all political showboating, and they don't need the help from the National Guard. What's your response to that?
Oh, look, I think that crime rates are starting to go down in our country because the president is actually stepping in to enforce the law. We've got to understand that when we do not enforce the law, when we allow criminals, repeat criminal offenders, to just willy-nilly waltz back onto our streets with absolutely no consequences whatsoever from our prosecutors or our judicial system, that we're going to have problems. I think that that has stopped with President Trump. He's shown a spotlight on the major cities that we have in this country that have been doing that have been pursuing policies that have really led us down the road to failed outcomes like cashless bail. And we're fixing that in real time. And whether they want to or not, these Democratic-run cities are being forced to adopt the conservative line on law and order here because the outcomes actually do matter to the American people, and they're starting to get held accountable for it.
And what's the appetite with it like within the Pentagon, within the military establishment? The fact that would they want to be deployed? They've pushed back on these sort of measures before. Is this something that the actual military establishment is behind?
I think yes and no. I think that there's, a broad consensus within the political leadership of the Pentagon that this is the right move. And I think that the conservative base that elected Donald Trump in November of last year, just a year ago today, is absolutely on the same page there. And I think that that consensus is actually increasing over time. Do I think we're going to get J.B. Pritzker, Illinois governor, to get on the same page with President Trump? No, I don't think so. But are we maybe able to get somebody like our governor in North Carolina, Josh Stein, on the same page about dealing with crime in Charlotte and Raleigh? I actually think that there's potential there. And so I think we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. But overall, if people care about outcomes, we've got to start looking at what has actually led to positive outcomes here, that you can look no further than what President Trump has done in Washington, D.C. for that example.
The numbers of recruits to ICE is up dramatically. The president said on the plane back from one of his latest visits, wherever he was going the other day, back from Asia, I believe, that actually, in response to those images of masked ICE operatives operating on the streets of America, almost looking like sort of paramilitary groups, that actually he thinks he can go further. There's room. He'd like to go further. This is just the beginning. Isn't there a case of actually using properly trained military officers rather than recruits who don't go through a huge amount of background checks or a huge amount of basic training before they're deployed onto American streets? It's actually probably a better use of resources to use people that actually know what they're doing here.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting angle to look at, right? But I think as I look at from a former special operators perspective, I was a Green Beret. Look, if you want to make a place safer, we know how to do this. We can do this almost overnight. And look, the law enforcement professionals inside of each one of these cities knows who the top 100 bad guys are. Those top 100 bad guys in that city are constantly committing crimes. They are lackadaisical about putting them in jail and keeping them in jail. The police are actually doing their jobs. It's the judges and the magistrates and the various prosecutors and district's attorney that are choosing to not enforce the law and not be allowing consequences to have happen with criminals. You've got to show criminals consequences. And if you do that, which the National Guard has the ability to do simply because they take up space and they allow local law enforcement to go do what they do best, which is put people in jail. If you can synergize all of that together, you can make our cities much, much safer in a very short period of time.
No, I tend to agree. When you're walking around in the streets of DC late at night or even going through Union Station, it is a very dramatically different place. So when the Democrats and their friends in the media howl about Trump's militarizing America, do you think that puts them out of touch with voters, or are they onto something here?
I think the Democrats in that instance are just doubling down on failed policies that have led us down the road to failed outcomes, which is exactly why President Trump got elected back in November. I don't think there's any more to it than that. You talked earlier in your segment about the Democrats being rudderless and afloat, kind of without a sail, without a motor, on open water. And the reality is that unfortunately they have not learned their lesson from last November. They're doubling down. I mean, look at what we're looking at tonight. We're looking at a socialistic, communistic potentiality of a mayor in America's largest city. They are doubling down. They are not learning their lesson, and that is going to hurt them in 2026 and 2028 if they continue down this road.
The highest turnout in New York, I'm hearing, since 9/11. It's dramatic numbers of people surging to the polling stations. There is something happening, though, isn't there? I mean, there was a poll this week that had, I think, President Trump on 63% unpopularity, disapproval rating, sorry. There is a sort of feeling that perhaps, yes, he's had some successes on the world stage, but domestically, perhaps his eye has been slightly off the ball. Prices are still high. The economy is starting to show some signs of wheezing. Are you confident that the president's got his priorities right?
Yeah, look, I think that a lot of this is very difficult to unpack in a very short period of time because a lot of the odds are stacked against the president. If we've had, which we had during the Biden administration, really poor policy that was built on poor principle, that's going to take some time to unravel and stabilize the country. But I think overall, things are moving in the right direction. If you look at where the stock market is right now, it's at near historic highs. We've certainly got some pricing inflation, and it's difficult to buy home right now. There's no question we're looking at increases in healthcare costs. All of those things need Washington's attention. But the reality is things are overall moving in the right direction with respect to the future prospects of the United States of America. And I think broadly, the American people see that, even if they don't like exactly how President Trump does it.
I think that's a very sensible point to end on there. North Carolina Congressman Pat Harrigan, thank you for joining us this evening.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Come back
Great to be
soon.
with you.
Thank you. Chris Neiweem, military strategist, is still with us in the studio. Let's just unpick it. Let's get into the granular details of this. How would this actually work to deploy the US military to carry out mass deportations on the American streets? Ethically, legally, and politically, I mean, that's a big ask, right?
Absolutely. So number one, being constitutionally sound, I think the president should seek Senate approval, congressional approval for things that revolve around the U.S. military.
Yeah.
But I think that a communication strategy of President Trump from the beginning is he likes to be unpredictable. He likes to sort of float these ideas out there to sort of gauge a sort of a political baseline to secure sort of support and test waters. It's not always the actual play that's on the field, but certainly reserving those forces, as Congressman Harrigan was also touching on, to be a little more conservative about their use. Their primary use is specifically looking at enemies, foreign and domestic. It's not necessarily getting into some of these more granular functions, and certainly the National Guard can be available. Its purpose is to protect cities, property, etc.
There seem to be, I mean, in D.C. there was obviously a great big flourish when they first arrived. There was that sort of 15-day period, I think it was, without a single murder. It got some quite positive headlines. Even, liberals, metropolitan liberals in this city were saying it's nice to be able to walk around and actually admitted that it did feel safer. Since then, I've seen more National Guards picking up litter than actually patrolling. Is it about visuals on this one, or is it, as their critics are saying, there's been various hysterical columns over the last few weeks suggesting that actually this is all just a prelude to to sort of get people psychologically ready to be seeing men in fatigues patrolling American streets?
It's a great inquiry. So a positive and then a questionable. The positive is it's like broken windows theory. Having them present does prevent crime. It prevents
frees up the
it frees up the police. Smash and grabs. People don't tend to, in Chicago, for example, smash up Oak Street and rob stores when you have National Guard sitting around. So the presence does help. A lot of people have had a favorable reaction to it. We all know most of the drugs and all that, southeast, other areas. So that's kind of the negative is, if you really want to really get after crime, you're going into southeast. You're going into areas with a lot of heavy crime. So it is optical, but I think it's a lot of people have looked at it favorably, and people do feel more secure with National Guard in certain segments of the city where there has been a ratcheting up of crime and issues. And we see that's very real. I mean, these are folks that can work on Capitol Hill and be subject of a crime in the evening. So I think that optically it's been good, but again, the length of their stay is going to be put into question, and the real efficacy, as you pointed out, cleaning up garbage, not exactly what National Guard
And the legality of it, I mean, it's a slightly grey area at the moment, right? It's short term, yes, but if this is going to be a long-term feature across American cities, they're going to have to seek congressional approval for this, right? And at the moment, it's all been done in executive order.
They should. I mean, we see it even with military function with like the cartels here in this context of National Guard. I think seeking congressional approval is more sound. It's more structured. That's what congressional committees are for. And I think it actually strengthens the administration and their policymakers' approach to have that synchronization. But certainly the president wants to correct issues in areas that have been a problem for a long time. Want to correct a small problem before it becomes bigger. I think that was some of President Trump's intent with the National Guard in some of these cities.
So, I mean, you're a veteran, you speak to fellow veterans, you speak to active service personnel, I'm sure, all the time. What's the mood within the sort of military establishment of this country? They are sort of being asked to do things that are not, are legally contentious at best. Not, as we say, the prolonged deployments of the National Guard, the strikes in the Caribbean and actually in the wider Latin America are, are without precedent, and the legal force behind them is contested. Is there a mood that this president is kind of just flying by the seat of his pants when it comes to the military and legality? And at some point, is someone going to go, enough?
It's a great point. So the Senate should actually, and I do think that the president should seek Senate approval for the strikes in the cartel. His point is very rational, which is these boats are coming. We know that the deaths that are implicated with these drugs makes sense. Senate approval, congressional approval makes it much more sound. If I were the president, I would seek that approval. In the meantime, we do know drugs kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
Killed my brother, many other people that have had fentanyl use. Yeah. So he's taking action, but Senate approval, absolutely. And then the second part of your question, Harry, is they follow orders. The UCMJ, when you hear articles about generals are a little bit cool on secretary, their job is to follow the chain of command. It's not to have an opinion about every single piece of people's feelings. That's why we have an apolitical military, and we should keep it that way, regardless of the administration.
And logistically, do you think they're planning for, further deployments in well, I think we know they're planning for further deployments in South America. Do you think there is somewhere sitting in the Pentagon right now, someone drawing up plans of how troops could be used to mass detain and deport?
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure that they do exist, and they're supposed to exist. They're supposed to have the plans. I think what also come down to is this administration wants to see the reaction. Some of those nations, for example, Venezuela, should actually start looking at having a more of a favorable discussion with the president. And the president of Colombia, instead of trash talking President Trump, that's usually not the right approach, if anyone's read Art of the Deal, for how to actually have a constructive negotiation with him.
Well, it sounds like Maduro is desperately trying to flog him as much oil as he possibly can, whether it will work or not. Chris, before you go, I wanted to reflect on the death of Vice President Dick Cheney today. It was announced he's died at 84. Obviously a highly controversial figure, but a massive figure, decisive and towering figure, even if you leave aside the Iraq War. Noticeably, President Trump has not said a word, and he's a man that normally says quite a lot. You've had Joe Biden and George Bush and various other figures coming out. What's your reflections on that man and his legacy that, at the time, back in 2003 to 2000, he was an incredibly toxic figure in America, on the left especially. But actually, looking back to where we are now, he kind of seems like a bridge maker.
Absolutely. It's a long picture. It could be a whole hour segment. The bottom line is, so I voted for President Bush and Vice President Cheney twice. I was young. I was a soldier. I served in Iraq. Supported him then. A figure with high fortitude, high intellect. If anyone wants to see a commanding debate performance, watch him decimate John Edwards in the vice presidential debate. High intellect. The controversies we can't ignore. No one would look back and say the Iraq War is a success at this point. And by the way, I'm not God. People have to go higher for their own justifications, but hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Soldiers I knew were killed, lost their legs. So, but that's for him, and that's for people's personal ethics. It's easier for people now, especially young people, to look at, warmonger this, warmonger that. You know what? Look at the overall picture of where our country was at with national security. The criticism, I think, is facially valid, but we can also look at someone's legacy of service, their lifetime of service, what they contributed to, and learn lessons as well, whether it's conflicts of interest, use of troops, and what we got out of that conflict, and not getting, to President Trump's credit, not getting into new conflicts without really kind of looking at all of the after post-war securing of a nation and troop levels, things of that nature.
Do you think it's sort of petulant then when the president doesn't? So Caroline Levitt at the press briefing today said, the president is aware that Dick Cheney had. For context, he was obviously a never-Trumper. He publicly stated that he voted for Kamala Harris last November. His daughter has obviously been a vocal Trump critic. But this is a former vice president, right? Yes, the flag has been lowered at half-mast, but would you not like to see the president at least acknowledge this sort of figure of the right?
Well, and I think it's a great thing of freedom of speech, right? The president has freedom of speech. He can be free to not speak, and everyone can have their variety of opinions. He may make a comment at some point, but yeah, there were some political realignments. There wasn't. President Trump was successful with a whole new sort of realignment of the Republican Party, so it doesn't really necessarily surprise me. But I think it's fair to have people, a lot of folks that I know that have worked with Vice President Cheney, to look at the positives, and people can express themselves. But it's a more complicated picture.
It does strike me, and from watching this from an outsider's perspective for the last 15, 20 years, is that the amount of stuff I will say, because I'm still on the radio, stuff thrown at Cheney, Romney was vilified, McCain was vilified by the left, by the mainstream media, as if they were some sort of fascist Nazis. And now they've almost run out of adjectives when they're actually greeted by things they can't really handle. These guys were pretty mainstream Republicans all along, right? And looking back, they kind of deserved a bit more respect.
Sure, no, many Democrats have said, could we bring back President Bush at this point? And it's a great point you made, because, and then Vice President Cheney voted for Kamala Harris. It was like the only way to actually get Democrat approval is just to, to do this. Darth Vader, they made a comment, they used to call him Darth Vader, that it was kind of interesting. But I remember the left being pretty nasty back in 2004 when I got back from Iraq and was in college, the progressive left. And they're still at it today.
Chris, thank you for coming. Let's come back and see us soon. After the break, we're going to talk about Sydney Sweeney. Let's take it in a completely different direction. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Search Harry Cole Saves the West. Click subscribe. Now, still with me in the studio is the Daily Wire's Tim Rice and commentator and friend of the show, Adrian Gray. Welcome back, both of you. I want to talk briefly about Erica Kirk, the late widow, the widow of the late murdered Charlie Kirk, has revealed that comedian Jimmy Kimmel's bosses offered her to come on the show for Kimmel to apologise to her personally after his pretty foul remarks surrounding her husband's murder. Her response was pretty damn classy. If you want to say sorry to someone who's grieving, go right ahead. But if that's not in your heart, then you don't have to do it. I don't want it, and I don't need it. Adrian, she is a class act, isn't it? This is a woman that's been, lost her husband, had to inherit his entire sort of empire of activism, and yet is having all sorts of foul things thrown at her, accusations that she's somehow the wrong kind of grieving. She wore leather trousers so she can't be heartbroken. They freeze-framed her, a picture of her hugging the Vice President, J.D. Vance, who's been a very supportive friend to her all the way through, to somehow suggest that they're having some lurid stuff. It's astonishing to see her resilience, isn't it?
It's crazy. The vitriol that she goes up against all day, every day is something I've never seen before. I think it's really showing like a deterioration of like the moral compass on a widespread scale that we've actually never seen before. And I think and we've seen AI videos of her, and for her to continue to show grace and strength and do these interviews and say these things with such grace, it's honestly, whether she wants it to be empowering for others, it is. And I can't understand why it doesn't matter what she does at this point. It doesn't matter what she does, she's doing it wrong.
Do you think it is there is a political undercurrent to this thing, or it's because it does strike me that it's slightly beyond the normal trolls and the sort of online hatred. It does strike me there's an angle to this stuff. Possibly not all of it domestic, possibly some sort of foreign interference, just trying to stir things up and sow division on the right.
It's interesting, definitely trying to stir things up. We also see, they come out and say that there's like 50 new chapters a day that TPUSA
Turning Point
is
USA,
opening.
yeah.
Right, so I can't understand if they're trying to murk the waters and be like, this isn't really happening. Like they're not moving this forward. They're not having any success in carrying on Charlie's legacy because they're spending all their time mucking it up. But the utmost strength, and for her to say, because they asked her in the interview if she feels safe, and she said that she does. She said, what are they going to do? Kill me so that I go with my husband in heaven? And she said that not lightly, but the Christ-like way that she described, what else are they going to take from me? I mean, that's truly powerful.
Michelle Obama came out today, or this week, and said that she had it worse than any first lady. Was never given her. The current first lady in the White House literally nearly put her husband in the ground a year ago, a year and a half ago, during the assassination attempts. He was 2 inches. She was an inch and a half away from losing her husband. It's slightly off the boil for Michelle Obama to make that point, right?
That's actually insane. And when does it end with Michelle Obama? And when does it end with all of this victimization? I mean, they went through Melania Trump's underwear drawer, okay? She had major fashion designers canceling her as somebody who had in the industry was a model, an international model, okay? The disrespect that she went up against has nothing to do with this fabricated narrative of victimization that Michelle Obama continues to spew.
Tim Rice, it strikes me that this is all being caught up in a slightly wider war amongst the right. I was writing at the weekend that just as the US right have control of the House, Congress, the Senate, the court, the vibes, they decide to go to civil war with each other. We discussed at some length the Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson row. It does feel to me that like the sort of future direction of Turning Point, which is obviously a massively powerful organisation for whoever is going to succeed Donald Trump, and right now it looks like it's going to be J.D. Vance who will have their backing, as he was on stage with Erica Kirk last week in Mississippi. Is Erica Kirk being sort of, am I right in perceiving that it's Erica being dragged into a pretty gutter politics battle that, is bigger than one woman?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, her being sort of her late husband's heir apparent has obviously put her in more of a spotlight than any widow should and mother of 2 young children who just lost their father should have to put up with. But
the fact is she has stepped into the arena. She has stepped
and
up.
She has. And
she picked up the torch.
Very true, yes.
And that seems to be sending people around the bend.
And I think, honestly, there is something extraordinary in how ordinary her response to all of this has been, right? Because, she's shown a lot of strength and a lot of grace. But also, right, what else are you going to do? You're going to carry on. You're going to seek solace in your faith. You're going to be a mother to your kids. You're going to make sure that you continue your husband's legacy. You're going to lean on the people who have been there for you and your husband and your family in good times and in bad. Erica Kirk is doing, obviously on a much grander scale than most of us can't fathom. She's doing what a normal, regular person does. And I think that is driving people batty. I think it is driving people insane that this is just an example of a woman who is just finding strength and finding courage and resolve in the places that any of us, really, in our worst moments, can find strength and courage and resolve.
The fallout from Tucker Carlson platforming Nick Fuentes, the sort of pint-sized little Nazi fella. Anyway, before I get myself in trouble, no, actually, I'm going to call him a pint-sized Nazi fella because he is. He runs his mouth off like a sort of SS officer after too many sherbets. But horrible little guy. But being platformed by the mainstream, it's sent obviously absolute ripples through the Conservative right. The Heritage Foundation have lost staff members, they're losing donors. This has absolutely put an absolute bomb underneath the sort of coalition that has sort of elected, that uneasy coalition of the traditional GOP right and the MAGA movement. Is this about wrestling control for 2028 and beyond? What's really going on here?
I don't think it's about wrestling control for 2028. I do think it's beyond. And I think, I think that we err a lot in how we talk about this, which is, they've called themselves, the new right or the alt-right or all these different terms, right? But the fact is, people like Fuentes and the Groypers and these neo-Nazis, they're not conservatives. They're certainly not Republicans in any meaningful sense.
So why is the boss of the Heritage Foundation saying, I'm not going to criticize, I disagree with him, but he shouldn't be cancelled?
I think that there is a widespread concern on the American right and a justifiable concern about what is happening with American young men. I think, right, it's a disaffected generation. They've been left behind.
But Charlie Kirk was a bulwark to all this absolute filth.
He was. I think that the concern to the care that some people, I think it's an example of misplaced care sometimes, right? We want to make sure that we can keep these young men in our tent so they don't go so far afield, right? So maybe, okay, if we can if we
But
can...
you're going to have to bring in some pretty smelly feet into the tent. Then,
And to be clear, I think it's a mistake, but I do think that's where it's coming from. It's almost like a parent who says, well, okay, I acknowledge that my teenagers are going to drink on a Friday night. I just rather you do it in the house, right? Well, that's okay if they're sneaking a couple of beers out of the garage, but if they're throwing absolute ragers in your basement and then letting their friends drive home, at some point you become culpable again.
Excellent metaphor, which I will definitely going to steal for Friday's column. Thank you for that. Adrian, let's talk about the other massive story on the right today. Sydney Sweeney had finally broken her silence in an interview with GQ magazine after that astonishing, amazing, hilarious and brilliant row over her American Eagle jeans advert. Sydney Sweeney has great jeans. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, so obviously the entire American left said it was obviously a Nazi joke and a slur. We had Donald Trump weigh into it. We had J.D. Vance weigh into it. And finally, she's broken her silence.
And now I'm going to weigh into it.
Go
there
on.
You have it. So, Sydney Sweeney is interesting. I think in the article in GQ, she did a little wink, to the MAGA movement, right? She's very
MAGA-coded.
MAGA-coded, there you go. She likes to nod to the base without giving too much. Honestly, I like her reaction. I like how she basically said, look, I work all day long. That's MAGA-coded. We are at work, okay? And so I like how she said that, I was off my phone, that's MAGA coded. But I think I love her attitude of, I didn't really care. I wanted to do it. I don't really care about the backlash, and I was at work.
She knows what she's doing, though. She turned up to that, was it the Vogue Awards last week, in quite the dress for a women's empowerment.
Yes.
It was essentially her nipples out.
Yes.
Like, let's not beat around the bush here.
Yep.
She's having fun, right?
She's having fun.
But even then, though, even now, even after two Trump victories, the death of woke, the corporate America ditching all the DAI stuff, rushing to sort of pivot back to the right, even now, someone who's clearly MAGA-y-ish actress still can't publicly say, you know what? Yeah, I am. So what?
Yeah, I think it's also interesting she's dating Scooter Braun, too, because we don't know where he
We're getting into a level of detail now. My iPad battery's just died as well, so you're going to have to fill us in on that one.
I don't know where we lie with that either. Where do some of these other celebrities truly lie in the political arena? We've heard rumors, but I think it's interesting. She likes to play in this sort of no man's land, but we all kind of know where she's nodded. But
Tim,
she knows how to play her cards.
Tim, what do you reckon? Secret MAGA codes from Sydney Sweeney.
Well, I'm going to sort of repeat myself again. I think Sydney Sweeney, I think one of the things that is extraordinary about Sydney Sweeney is that she's in a lot of ways very ordinary, right? She's obviously she's a looker, right? She's got this blonde bombshell look. That's not ordinary. Certainly has an extraordinary career, but she definitely plays into this a little bit. Like, she knows that there are some things that make her less than ordinary, but she plays into it. I'm just a girl. I'm just working. She talks a lot about how I need to keep a job. And it's like, yeah, right.
But do you think if she did come out and say, yeah, you know what, I voted for Trump and I am a bit MAGA and, fine, deal with it, she would actually lose contracts still, or are we past that stage of American culture?
I don't know if we passed that. I think we're starting to pass that stage of American culture. I think Sydney Sweeney is one of a handful of people who would be able to do it regardless.
Yeah.
Adrian, do you think she'd lose money, lose contracts?
It's tough to say, but I like the way she plays her cards. And listen, I think at the end of the day, we're all Sydney Sweeney fans. And you know what?
Except if you're a progressive media outlet or voter in America who seems to think she's now the Antichrist.
We've seen her at the gun range, too.
Well, there we go. If that's not MAGA coded,
it's
then
MAGA coded.
I don't know what. Adrian, thank you for coming here. Tim Rice, as ever, always friends of the show and always welcome back. Right, tomorrow we're going to know whether the socialists have taken over New York, but I suspect they would have done. But that's all we've got time for tonight. Don't forget to subscribe. That was Harry Cole, Saves the West, and I'll see you tomorrow.